Hi, my name is Brian. I'm a DevOps consultant with Release Team, and today in our What Makes a Jira project series, we're going to go over versions and components. So, we've already talked about issue types, priorities, workflows, screens, fields, notifications, permissions, and roles. So, we're going to talk about versions and components. First, let's go over versions. What are versions? Well, they're just like their sound, they're releases. And we're going to talk about this kind of at the basic level as it just deals with the current project. There are other items out there now as Jira continues to grow and develop. That's also for releases and other types of things. But we're just going to talk about versions within the projects at a very basic level. What versions do is allow you to group tickets together for a version, for a release. And then it allows you to obviously release that version. Now, versions don't reach across different projects. They are project contained. So, project A will have certain versions. Project B will have certain versions. They will not cross over. So, if you select version 1 in, let's say, project A, and version 1 in project B, you're not going to see the items between project A and project B in version 1. So that's one thing to keep in mind when using this form of versions is that it is project set. So let's take a look at versions and see what we can do with those. So here we are, we're in our mobile dev project. We're going to go over here to our versions section. Typically, if you don't have any versions in your project, you're able just to click that button here that will allow you to add versions. We already have some versions in here, so we have to go over here to our left-hand side and select versions. And here we are at our release versions page. Here we have our version number, our status, the version progress, the version start date, release date, a description, and then we have more actions. We'll get a little more detailed into what you could do with the more actions options here in a moment. We're also able to create a new version. We can do a search if we have a very long list of versions, and we can also filter between released, unreleased, and archived. So let's take a look at what happens when we just click a version here. So we're going to go to version 0.1. It's currently marked as unreleased. This is the progress, so it's showing you how many items are in progress, how many items are to do, and then if it's green, how many items are done. So here we have 1 in progress and 3 to do. We have our start date, which was June 3rd, and our release date, which was June 24th. As you can see here, we're in the red. So we're beyond that release date, and it's still showing it as unreleased. Let's take a look and see what we have going on here. Now we have our version 0.1 release page. We do have a section where we can title it and put information in there. Maybe this is where you state the purpose of the release. If there's any related work, we can add that from here. If there's any link designs, it would show up in this location here. And then we can look at our work items. So here's our 4 work items. It's going to show us obviously the usual information, key, type, the description, the priority, the status, the assignee, and then we have an option over here where we're allowed to move these to different versions if we need to, or also remove from a version. We're then able to add work items by just selecting this plus button here. And with that, we're able to add a work item into that version. Over here on the right-hand side, we do have a little bit more information for this version. We have the status of it. So right now we have it as unreleased. We have the start date, the release date, the driver. So this is the person who created that release or the person who is leading it, the contributors. If there's any approvals that need to happen before a release goes out, we can do that here. And then down here, we're going to see that progress. So related work, we have none right now. And then the current work items, we'll see exactly where they're all at. Done, 1 work item is in progress, and 3 are to do. And 0 are in warning, so that's a positive sign. We also have up here where we can set up automations if need be, and then we can also generate release notes. So let's go ahead, let's say, maybe some of these tickets didn't belong in this first release. Actually, we were only testing out one ticket or one work item, and the rest of these need to move later on. So let's go ahead, we're going to move most of these over to version 1.5. And we do that by just clicking the ellipsis and selecting version 1.5. You're also able to do it from within the ticket itself. We'll go down here where it says fixed version on the ticket, and we can put 1.5 and remove 0.1. Then you just click away, it'll save. If we go back here, we'll refresh our screen on our version 0.1 release page, our version page. And now we see that we just have one. Now I do know that this ticket was completed, this work item was complete. So I'm going to click on it and I'm going to move it to being done. Now what we'll do is we'll refresh the screen and now we'll see that the ticket is showing as done. That work item is now done. Over here on our progress bar, it is also showing as done. So let's go over here and let's release this version. So now Mobile 51 is showing as complete, and we can now go over here to the status of the release and we can release it. Now this can also be done on that main fixed version page that we showed earlier in the project settings, but let's do it from here. After we hit release, it then takes us to this page to confirm that we want to release this version. And here it's going to show you the items that will be released, the date that was released. I understand that we just did it today, but we did release this version back in June 24th. And if you want to set up any release automation, and then you can also create release notes. So we're going to go ahead and select release. This will now take us to the create release notes page where we can choose the Confluent space or parent item that we want to put it at, the work types, and the fields that we want to include in there. So maybe I do want to actually include the description of my release notes. So I'll add that. I'll select create in Confluence. And then after it generates it, it's going to show you currently a non-published release notes page. So you'll see in here, we've got our release notes. It's created the release, the date, the version that we're on, the description, the contributors, and then any items that were included. You can also go in here and add summary, new features, improvements, items like that. If you want to publish this, you would simply just hit publish. You can also update the title so it reflects the correct date as well. So now that we're back in our summary page of our mobile dev project, we'll see version 0.1, which we just released, now has a little icon next to it indicating that it has been released. If we go to the versions page, that one is no longer there because we're just looking for unreleased. If we were to include released, it now shows up in there as well. So what are the other items that we could do with the More Actions button? So you'll see here, as I mentioned earlier, we're able to release a version from that More Actions button, and it's going to look the same as it did when we did it from the release version page. We can archive a release. We're then able to merge a release. So we can move a release into another release. So that will take the items that were in that release that we're merging, and it's moving those into a different version. We can make edits, so update names, descriptions, or you can delete it. What I want to do is I want to merge version 0.5 into 1.0 just because 1.0 doesn't have enough in it and 0.5 didn't meet the deadline. So we're going to hit merge. We're going to select the version we want to merge it into. Now we click on version 1.0, we'll see that the progress towards it has changed as we have added quite a few more items to it. So now we're getting a little bit further into our time and we want to go ahead and archive a version. I think it's time that we archive version 0.1. So we're going to go ahead and select this archive option. And now it is simply that, it is archived. So if we were to unselect these, we would just have version 0.1 pop up. It will now note that it is archived. We will see that we do have our release notes will always be in here under related work. and the information still retains. It's just no longer showing up in that active search for versions. So here we are again back at version 1.0, and our developers have been putting in overtime. They've got everything complete. We are at 100% done. So let's go ahead, let's get this version released. So we'll go here, we'll select release. Once again, we get prompted with the work items that will be released, the release date. We're actually ahead of time, so we're going to release it today. And now we have this button for setup release automation. We saw it earlier, we didn't talk about it. Let's look at it a little bit deeper now. So that takes us to our automation page for the project. And here we can look at triggers that may relate to versions. So I filtered it down here to show the ones that do have version triggers. So we have if a version is deleted, release, updated, created, or unreleased. Let's click on release just to see what kind of information it gives us. So it executes this rule when a version is released. We can access the version object and any other components by using the version and then the smart value, which is listed here. As mentioned previously, those smart values are really great for dynamic items such as this. So I once again encourage you to kind of explore those smart values on your own. What else can we use version for? Let's add a component and let's look at our actions. We're going to type in version up here the correct way. So here we are now at our action part of the automation, and we can do a few things with versions there. We can create a version, release a version, or unrelease a version. This is all dependent on what you would need to have done or would want to have done to make this automation make sense to you and your team. But there are, as mentioned, automation triggers and actions that do call to versions. Back here at our releasing of version 1.0, we then have another button once again to create release notes. So let's go ahead, select release, and it's going to default to the last page that I created those release notes in. It's going to show the work types, and then once again we can select the fields that we want to include. We're going to hit create in Confluence. It'll give us that Confluence pop-up again in an unpublished version. And now we have the same options we saw before, now just a little bit more information with description, things like that. We could also add in their release notes, bug fixes, summary, and any improvements, just like before. So let's go over how to create a version. So here we are at our release page for our versions on our mobile dev project. And we have the create version button. So we'll select that. So here we are now at our create version page where we can enter a name, the start date, the release date, the driver. Now this will default to who is creating that version, but you can update this to whoever is driving that release or this version, and then a description. We're going to go ahead and select save. And now we'll see that 1.9 has been created. So what happens to a release if you need to release it but not everything is done, not all the work items are complete? Let's take a look at that scenario. So here we have our version 1.5 release, and it's currently in unreleased status. We have a very important work item in here that we need to send out. We need to get sent out because it is fixing a bug, and that bug is causing an issue. We have mobile 22 here, which is our mobile sync bug. That is showing as done, and that's the main reason we need to get this version out. Could we do a one-off or a hotfix? Of course. But let's take a look if we just go ahead and release version 1.5 with a few other items in there as well. So we're going to go ahead and select release. We have our release prompt. So it's going to show us in here that we have 19 unresolved work items, and we can select this to see what those items are, and then it gives us the option of what to do with those unresolved work items. We can move them to a specific version, or we can ignore them where they would just drop from the version that they're currently tied to. And then we of course have our release date, and then we can create release notes. I'm going to go ahead and ignore creating release notes because I think we've done that enough now where you hopefully are familiar with it. So let's go ahead and select release. Over here it will now show as released, and we are only going to see what was included in the release. So if we go back to our versions, we'll now see that version 1.9 has all of those unresolved work items from version 1.5. So it's nice to be able to have that option if you need to get a version out prior to everything being completed, and it makes it simple just to move it to the next release or the next version. One thing to keep in mind when you're doing a search throughout Jira, especially with JQL, or even like earlier when we were looking on the actual work item, the field is going to be called fix version rather than just version. So make sure you keep in mind when you're looking for this field on the actual work item, it is fix version and not just version. So what I've shown you here today will work the exact same in a Jira service management project as well. There are no versions in Jira business projects, so unfortunately this one's not going to apply to those type of projects. The next thing we're going to talk about are components. So what are components? Components allow you to group and also assign work items based on a familiar thing, a common item. So here we are in our mobile dev project, and this will work the same in a Jira service management project as well. So we're on this screen, we have components over here, and you'll see that there are a few components listed with names. What does that mean? Well, let's go over here to our left hand side to components. We're going to select that. And for today's video, we're just going to talk about Jira components. There is a functionality where you can switch your components over to Compass components, but that would also take a video on learning about Compass as well, and we're just kind of focused here on the core Jira component functionality. So if you are interested in the other form of Compass components, let us know in the comments below and we can get a video created on that as well. So in our component screen, we're going to see a lot of things that are pretty familiar format wise. We're going to have our create component button over here, the component name, a description, the lead, the default assignee, how many issues, and then more actions. So let's talk about each one of these. So the component name is just that. It's the component name. The description is going to be what that component could be. And a component can be kind of wide open. It's how you determine you want to group these work items together. Now, just like with versions, components, Jira components are just per project. They do not reach across other projects. So platform support in the mobile dev project wouldn't be the same information or the same work items as platform support in another project. The components are independent. They are on their own projects. We then have our component lead, and that's just letting you know the person who is in charge or whoever is overseeing whatever that component could be. A nice thing is, as we look here at the next column with that default assignee, we can either assign it to a project lead or you can have it assigned to a component lead. So if a ticket or work item is created with that component automatically or added in there, it's going to auto assign to the default assignee. And we'll go over a little bit more of that when we create a component. Now, if there's any issues tied to one of those components, it will show here. And then we have our more actions where we can edit, which is updating the name, description, lead, and the default assignee, or you can delete it. So here we are on one of our work items, and we need to add a component to this. So we're going to go down here on your right hand side under the details tab, and we're going to look for components. Now this has a different component that's using one of the Compass components, but we can go in here and let's add platform support as our component. We'll click away from it. We can go back to our component page. So here we'll see that it shows the number of issues that we have, and now it shows one issue. By clicking that, it's going to take you to a search page that's going to show you all of the components and work items that are tied together. So here we just have mobile 47 that is showing up with that component. So how do we create a component? Well, as we spoke about earlier, we're going to select create a component. So here we are now at our create Jira component screen. We've added a name, a description, and the component lead. And now we can look at that default assignee field. So it could be the component lead, the project default. So if you have a project default assignee, that would take place, or project lead, or you can leave it unassigned. We're going to go ahead and just select the component lead. We'll hit save, and now you'll see your component is on there. And when you're doing a search, unlike fixed versions or versions, you can search for component. And in those work items, as you saw earlier, a work item can have more than just one component. So we can come in here and now we could add another component if need be. Going back to our main component page, it's going to show, yep, there's an issue in platform support and one also in component B. As I mentioned earlier, this functionality I'm showing you today is the same in Jira Service Management projects as well. I want to thank you for joining me today as we went over versions and components in our series of what makes a Jira project. My name has been Brian. I'll see you next time.